Hey there, Rubicon Ranger here, and today we're going to talk about the poor man's fire selection control. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that you can, using nothing but human inputs, no logic required, fire either both plasmas at the same time or at different timings, depending on how you want them set up, as long as you have a slight delay between the guns. And this works for both laser and plasma, although you kind of have to treat it differently. So in this setup, I have both my guns tied off to a single input, just the normal fire button, and then I have a short delay between them. So this is a very short delay. You really shouldn't ever use this short of a delay. I use it for personal reasons, just the builds and the style of flyer that I like, stability and consistency. I need this short of a delay. And it's partially for this showcase to show that it can be done with a very, very short delay between weapons. So I will show you what I'm talking about in test mode. All right, so here we are in test mode, and I have the same setup that you saw in the bay. So I have both my guns tied off to the single input, so my left mouse button with a very short delay, and you'll see if I click and drag, they're fired with a very, very short delay between them, almost at the same time. So if I wait for the meter to recharge for the first gun, there's a delay in between when that first gun finishes recharging and when the second gun is finished recharging. If you click once very quickly in that time window, you'll get one gun to fire instead of both guns. Then you'll wait until the first gun's cycle has finished recharging, however long you want the gap between the guns firing to be, and then you'll fire the second gun. And then at that point you can hold down your mouse button or whatever input you're using, and you can maintain that staggered fire until you let off and let them naturally reset. So what am I talking about? I will show you. So we click once, we get both weapons to fire, and then I'm going to click once super quick at the top of the arc. So there we go, I got a single input, and then I hold down, and now I have two shots that are staggered. And if I wait a little extra time, I can change the timing between shots. So if I wait here at the top of the recharge, now I have two that are very close to one another, and so on and so forth. You can basically set it up however you want. So I'll show you one more time to show that it's not a fluke and it can be done. Might take you a time or two if you have a really short delay like I do, but you should be able to replicate this fairly easily. Click once to fire, click once at the top of the arc. So there we go, I got a single shot, and then I hold down and I get two now. So there you go. So now I'll go show you a similar concept to this, but with lasers. So see you back here in a second. All right, so here we are back in test mode. Same kind of setup, except this time instead of plasmas, I have lasers. And instead of burst fire, I have chain fire. So with plasmas, for flyers, you'd group up the shots to try to get them to not throw one another off. So if you fire and it torques your craft, the second shot could be off, so you try to group them together. It's kind of the opposite case for lasers, where you want their recoil to be kind of affecting your craft in a single uniform pattern. And so you can kind of adjust for that with a constant tapping on one of the turn keys or something like that to keep your weapons on target, right? If you group all the shots up into a single shot, it'll torque you really hard, throw off your aim, throw off your bearing. Generally not a good thing. Ground vehicles, it's a preference thing, right? For plasmas, the reason why we might want to go to the alternate fire of, every other, evenly spaced shots versus grouped is capping towers, making sure that you're damaging armor and not doubling damage up on the same parts, that kind of thing. For lasers, you would want to group. Why would you want to group up your shots? Well, you may want to get a tighter grouping. So normally, if an enemy has really well distributed armor, like they have a nice uniform shell that's pretty tough to break through, like there's a high threshold of damage to break through, 3-4 shots in a single location to break a block off. And if you're constantly changing the angle on them, they're turning their bot, and so it's hard to get a tight grouping into a single area. So if you switch to burst fire, you're more likely to crack through that shell and damage internals if you're really focusing. Some people also just prefer it, having the burst so they can kind of aim, shoot, aim, shoot, aim, shoot, versus having to constantly track, and they land more shots that way. So it could be personal preference, it could be just the situation that you're dealing with. So how do we group up shots using lasers? How do we switch from chain fire to essentially burst fire? Well, that's quite difficult actually. So it all comes down to what rate of clicking you have that feels natural to you, and how that syncs up with the delay for the lasers. So chain fire lasers are on 0.1 seconds delay between one another. So that means first gun's on 0, second gun's on 0.1, third gun's on 0.2, so on and so forth. So this is just a muscle memory thing. You'll have to practice a little bit. I'll tell you how I do it. You can try that and then maybe do some other stuff. So the way I do it is I will halfway through a firing cycle, I'll click once to get all the guns to fire once, one round. And then halfway through that round, I'll start clicking to try and stagger the second set of shots a little bit more. And if I get it about right, I can group the second set of shots up into the first. And the goal usually for me is to get about half the firing window when you're firing and half the firing window when your guns are not firing. So you have 50-50 on-off kind of spray. And that way you're not getting thrown off too much when it fires, but you can still group a fairly tight shot. The best way to do that, I found that, is with audio. So just listen, and when you hear the guns group up with one another, hold down the trigger, and you'll keep that firing pattern, just the same as the plasmas. Then when you let off, it goes away. So halfway through, I'm going to listen until they group up. Usually I try to get either 3 groups of 2 or 2 groups of 3, one after the other, or sometimes it's like a nice even burst. Those are the 3 that I most commonly get, or that I aim for. When I hear that, I hold down the trigger. So what are we talking about? I will show you. So normal chain fire, all the shots are being fired evenly. Now, switching over. Halfway through, I'm click once, halfway through, start clicking. And I click about a rate of click, 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 click. Maybe a little faster than that. You can probably hear it through the mic, but here, let's try. Let's see how fast I can get it too, because sometimes it takes a little extra time, and I might have to try it 2 or 3 times to get it. But sometimes it just, once you seem to get it, it seems to come back to you pretty quickly. So hold down the trigger, and then, or click once, and then, okay, so that's like 75% of the time. So let me try again here. Okay, so I didn't quite catch the stagger there. So when that happens, you probably want to back off sooner than that. Do the single click again, try to stagger the shots into it again. So click once, start clicking. There we go. There's a nice 50-50. I'd say that's about 50-50 anyway. Maybe a little more. See if I can try to get a different grouping. One more time. Click once. Didn't get it. Switching back. Starting over. Click once. Okay, there's 2 groups of 3. Boom, 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 boom. So there's 2 groups of 3. Let's see if I can get 3 groups of 2. Probably not, but... Okay, there we go. That took a while. That's evenly spaced, but there you go. There's 2 shots per... 2 shots, 2 groups of 3 evenly spaced. That took way too long, so I'm definitely gonna edit that part out. So in conclusion, being able to space out your shots on the battlefield only makes you more flexible, but it may make you more comfortable in the long run, having yourself more options, being able to make sure your plasma damage lands more consistently and doesn't overlap, and make sure that your laser damage is landing on target and in a tight grouping so that you get the most out of the damage that you're doing. So hopefully that was helpful, and all of you have a good day.